Hello, everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira. I am your host, and today's opening song was the opening theme to Star Wars because today is May the 4th. That was a suggestion from the wonderful, the wise Mickey herself. So I'm so excited for today's session. We officially closed out our self-esteem and self-image month last week. We did a lot of work on our self-esteem and self-image, and I heard from a lot of you who were like, wow, this is such a nuanced topic that we don't always think about the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we see ourselves. And hopefully it opened your eyes a lot to your own self-image and maybe the places where you can open more doors that are really positive and serving for you, and maybe close more doors that maybe don't need to work for you anymore. So we are really excited to be moving into our remote slash flex work and productivity month starting today. As far as Motivational Monday goes, this is probably one of our shortest months with Motivational Monday because we have Memorial Day that happens at the end of the month. So we only have 3 sessions, but today we're going to be talking about how to work remotely without burning out. So I'm very excited for today's session. And as per usual, I'm curious how many of you are new here? Drop 111 in the chat if you are new, drop 222 in the chat if you've been here for a while and you are a lover of life guides. For those of you who are new here, there are a couple of different ways that people use life guides. Our group sessions, these events are one of our main ways. So we've got motivational Mondays almost every Monday, unless there's a holiday. We have the deep dive, which is a 60-minute long session at the end of the month, the last Wednesday of the month, where we just dive into the topic, close it all out, take out every last nook and cranny that we have of the conversation, and dive in. And then the following day, that Thursday, we have our deep dive mentorship, which is a live guided session with one of our guides where you're able to ask your questions, get feedback, let us know where you're at in regards to the main topic. And our guides can actually give you real life feedback based on the topic. And all of that is built in a way to help you build a relationship with our guides because our guides are amazing. You all either work with, or maybe go to school with, or have some sort of partnership with an organization that has a relationship with Life Guides where you have access to our services. So you also have one-on-one journeys with our guides where they can help you navigate your life on a larger scale. And it's very different than therapy. Therapy is usually specifically only in more of like the emotional, mental realms, but life guides, you can do professional development, you can do financial assistance, you can do meditation, you can do self-esteem and self-image, and even remote slash flex work and productivity. So our guides help you understand where you're at, where you want to go, and how to get there. So one of our amazing guides, who I'm so excited to intro today, is Mickey. And I'm going to drop her Life Guides profile in the chat in just a moment. But her superpower is that she turns life challenges into opportunities for growth, helping others find resilience, clarity, and courage to embrace change with confidence. Mickey, we are so happy to have you. Welcome to today's conversation. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience with remote or flex work, and why this conversation is important to you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kara. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here with all of you. I was just thinking about what you were talking about last month was with like self-talk, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is so perfect because a lot of what we're going to talk about today is like self-talk in your head of say thinking that you can't do things. Let's see. I have been a leader for almost 25 years. I currently am the VP of Administration for an international non-government organization with offices in Africa, Asia, Central America, the United States, and Europe. And 98% of our work is remote work. And you can imagine the time zone difference. I'm in Colorado. I work with people in Cambodia. That's 14 hours difference. And so you have to get super creative and super flexible when working with people that are that far away and everybody in between. We have people in Africa too that are 8 hours different. So if you think about that, figuring out how to prioritize, really effectively communicate, set boundaries, things like that. And I think that's why I'm excited today is to give people some tips on how you can just be a little bit more productive and a lot less burnt out.
Absolutely. And navigating that burnout is so important. Today's conversation is how to work remotely without burning out. And I do think that there's so much of the conversation around productivity, which of course is important. We're here to work and make amazing things happen, but how do we do that in a healthy and sustainable way? So before we really dive into today's conversation, for those of you who either work remote or work hybrid, um, please drop in the chat 333 and let us know. Yeah, a lot of us. Okay. But we have a lot of people who work remotely, either full-time or part-time. So I feel like this is a relevant conversation and relevant month for you all. And we do choose this programming this year based on the main topics that people use our guides for, and remote and flex work and productivity was one of those. So Mikki, as we're diving deeper into this topic, obviously a lot of us can relate to what working remote is. There are a lot of ways that working remote is very easy. There are a lot of ways that maybe we struggle with working remote, and I feel like it's why people seek out help with this topic. But what are some of the ways that we can begin to manage our workload to ultimately avoid burnout?
Yeah, I think the first step is understanding what your work style is. So, if you're somebody who's a high achiever, are you potentially using or overusing that strength that's leading to burnout? Or if you're a procrastinator, what actions are you taking that are maybe leading to burnout? Or a lot of us are somewhere in between. Maybe we are high achiever when it comes to the things that really motivate us and really drive us, but then the things that drain us, maybe we procrastinate a little bit. And because we're not seeing people face to face and having that usual cadence, it can be very easy to work from before the sun comes up to after the sun comes down. And especially in mission driven work or in work where we really feel a higher sense of calling or higher sense of purpose, because the work we're doing is so important, it's very hard for us to give ourselves permission to step away. And so first recognizing what kind of employee you are, what motivates you, and looking at what drives you, what slows you down, what really makes you tired. And then thinking about the things that we already now know. When I think about burnout, we know these things. We've known them since we were growing up, since we were in school. Getting outside, going for a walk, staying hydrated. I think last time I spoke with you, I talk about, I have this tendency to like get in goblin mode by the end of the day. Like I'm hunched over and I'm like typing versus like sitting up and having good posture. And so I got proactive and got myself an ergonomic chair that doesn't have a back to it. And I mean, I got it maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I can't even tell you how much better I feel. So like little changes like that can really help you out. And then thinking about things where we can be proactive to where we can schedule time in our calendars for these walks, to give ourselves focused time, to even just have a mental break, to do a little bit of meditation or to read a book or to play with our pets or whatever it might be, giving ourselves permission to do that. Um, Something that I think about and that I talk to my employees about, and I talk to the people that I mentor and guide at Life Guides about, is a lot of times when I first talk with people and ask them if they can schedule time for walks or take a long weekend or something like that, they say they can't because. And before I jump into that, I do want to say that I do recognize that I come up from a place of privilege where I do have the ability to change my calendar and block things off. And not everybody has that. Not everybody has the choice, but there are still ways that you can protect yourself. So when I'm talking with people and they tell me I can't do this because, I start digging in and asking a lot of questions. And it's similar to what you were talking about from last month. They've created something in their head where it's, what if people don't think that I'm working hard enough? What if people think I'm not a team player? What if, what happens if I turn this in tomorrow instead of today? Like they build up a lot of that talk in their head. And I give a lot of pushback of if you don't take the time to take care of yourself, if you don't take the time to go on the walks, take the vacation, take a break, what are the consequences if you really do burn out and you're now out for 3 months instead of 30 minutes? Or what happens if you burn out so badly that you quit and then they don't have you anymore? And so it's actually our responsibility, I think, as employees and as leaders to take care of ourselves so that we can show up. Because I can tell you when I've taken a long weekend or when I've given myself a little bit of focus time or I've gone for a walk during lunch, when I come back, I'm much more efficient and much more effective than I was when I was in goblin mode.
So beautiful. I feel like so many of us can deeply relate to that. And I'm so happy that you touched on the point, Mickey, of I can't, because I feel like exactly what you said. A lot of us have these narratives of all of the reasons why we can't. But at the end of the day, and this is something I really want to start this month with for you all to understand and have as a baseline for the conversations that we're going to have. A business can run 24/7. A business does run 24/7. Why? Because it's a business. You are a human being. You are not a machine. You are not a business. You physically cannot run 24/7. So we see the demands of a business. And we assume that those are the demands of a human, but it's not. We have our own needs that we have to acknowledge and support every day. So I want you to remember you're not a machine, you're not a
Mhm.
business. You are a human at the end of the day, and there are biological limitations that you just can't avoid. And like Mickey said, it's either going to show up with you taking a short break, or it's going to show up much larger later on if you don't learn these skills now. And I'm curious, how many of you do relate to that feeling of being burnt out? Drop 444 in the chat if you're like, I can very much relate.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
people.
a lot of us can.
Mhm.
So Mickey actually has a really cool um, kind of like framework, Eisenhower Matrix that we talked about. That's specifically what it's called, which is a frame of reference that you use to manage your priorities. Can you,
Mhm.
Mickey, help us walk through this? Because I feel like so many people understand burnout, and I want to give them the realistic tools to start to realize, oh, there's a way to work maybe more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of you might have heard of this before. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix, and you can look it up. If you Google it, you'll see a bunch of different training sessions and a little chart. It's a quadrant that breaks down how to look at your day, how to look at your tasks and your activities, and figure out how to prioritize. And so I use this personally, and I use it with my teams across the world as well. So the first quadrant is urgent and important. So these are things that we need to handle today. They're things that have deadlines today. Maybe other people are waiting for something. They can't move forward unless we have taken action, or something that's related to safety or security. Like it would be a big issue if you didn't handle those. So that's number one. The next is not urgent, but important. And so for me, I work in HR and compliance. So for me, that would be revising the employee handbook. It's super important that I get this policy out and make sure that everybody has access to it. But it's not necessarily something that I have to do at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. And so that is something that I would schedule. So that's where I look at my calendar for the week. Okay, Tuesday at 2 p.m., I'm going to block off 2 hours to make sure that I have time to do that. The next one is not important, but urgent. And so, again, using myself as an example, that would be maybe an invoice that comes in that for some reason is overdue. We get a notice today that, oh my gosh, it's overdue. I don't necessarily have to take care of that. I can delegate that to the people that handle invoices and make sure that it gets paid. And so I'm handling it by delegating it to somebody else. And then the last one is the one where I think we actually spend most of our time, which is the not urgent and not important. These are things that we need to eliminate. For those of you that are AI curious, I would say, or AI positive, I know there's a lot of people that are still getting comfortable with AI and the ethics related to it. But for those of you that are using tools like Gemini, or Copilot within your work, you can actually set up workflows in your email, in your inbox to help you with this one, to eliminate spam, to eliminate the reply alls that you never need to read, to eliminate the responses to calendar invites, things like that. So again, it's urgent and important. That's the one that you do today. There's not urgent but important. These are the ones that you schedule and give yourself time to work on them. There's not important and urgent. This is where you delegate to somebody else. Somebody needs to take care of it, but not me. And then the one where we spend most of our time is just get rid of it. And that is the not urgent and the not important.
Hmm, I'm sure there are a lot of things on all of your lists that might need a little bit of redirecting. Even me, I'm thinking about um, some of the things that are on my list that are important but not urgent that are taking up space in my head of, oh my gosh, I haven't done that. But there are a lot more things that have been more urgent and more important, and it's been in my head. And I feel like for me, it's setting the time maybe in a week or two when I'm a little less busy and being like, cool, that is absolutely going to get done. I have designated the time for it to get done so it doesn't take up mental space because I feel like a lot of us use a lot of mental capacity working remotely, just wondering how to navigate our tasks, how to navigate our personal life, how to navigate our work life. And it's a lot of mental energy that maybe with a framework can be so much easier. And Chris says in the chat, I just freed up some time.
I love that, Chris. Thank you so much for putting in the link in the chat. Chris and I facilitate some cohorts together, and he's always so good at putting the links in chat. So I appreciate that.
Chris is like the ultimate team player.
He really is. Yeah.
So, you and I talked a little bit about calendar blocking, and I know you mentioned it in the beginning when we asked our first question, but I'm curious if you can take us a little bit deeper through calendar blocking. I think that you referenced it really well, especially with like updating the handbook and blocking time for that so that it's out of your head. But also, you talked about calendar blocking in regards to really looking at your calendar ahead of time and scheduling the mental space that you need to reset throughout the day and the week and ensure that you are in a good space for longevity in the work that you do. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always look at my calendar either Thursday or Friday for the week ahead. I look at what meetings I have and where I'm going to be spending energy, and I try to block off some focus time before that or after that, depending on if I have to prepare for something. I'm also a morning person, and so this goes back to like recognizing your strengths and your challenges. And so I'm a morning person, and so I can have meetings at 6 or 7 or 8 a.m. and I'll be awake and on the call and ready to go. But if somebody, I told you before, I work globally. So if somebody were to schedule a meeting at 9 p.m. for me, I'm going to be like this on the call and less productive. And so I will block off those times with a note that says, email me before you schedule this. So if you're somebody where people put meetings on your calendar a lot, block off the times that you know don't work for you. If you have to pick up your kids from school, if you want to go to yoga during lunch or something, block that time off so that people can't schedule it. And you can put a note in there that says, like if this is an emergency or if this is urgent, send me an email and we can talk. And then I put in focus time. I make sure that every day I have at least a little bit of focus time. And what I love about that is that it can actually be focus time where I'm working on finishing a project. Or if there's something urgent that comes up, that could be the time that I work on that as well. That way it's not competing with different meetings that I have. And so I'm always looking ahead. And then every day I look ahead the next day and the day after as well. So if things come up that I didn't expect are happening, I can rearrange my calendar. When I work with people on this, it goes back to the I can't that we were talking about a little bit before. One of the things that I've seen is there's a lot of paralysis in setting calendar blocks like this because people get so caught up in the what ifs. Well, what if an emergency happens? Or what if the CEO calls me? So instead of thinking about the 98% of the time and scheduling for like the norm, they don't schedule because of those one-offs. And so I just really challenge people to flip their thinking and think, okay, I'm going to schedule as if this is a normal week. I'm going to put in my focus time. I'm going to schedule my time for the projects that I need. And then when the one-off happens, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to be agile. It'll be okay.
So beautiful. So her focus time is walks, meditations, time to reset her brain. And that in and of itself is going to be so helpful for you. And it can even be 15 to 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be sustainable. And if you are that type of person who maybe is like, I can't, maybe just do 10, 15 minutes to start. maybe once
Yeah.
a day.
5 minutes, 5 minutes after every meeting, Oh, and another thing that I do that I did touch on is I don't schedule hour meetings. I schedule 50-minute meetings. Sometimes they go an hour, right? Like sometimes the conversation is good or you're not quite done. But most of the time we've trained ourselves that that's the behavior. So it gives ourselves 10 minutes just for a bio break, to go get some water, to run outside really quick. And so those little bit of changes really help you when they add up over a week and over a month and over a year.
And I've even started seeing the same with clients that we do custom events for, where they ask us to bring a guide and have a conversation. They've started doing 30-minute sessions
Yeah.
instead of hour-long sessions because they realize an hour is a long time. So just because things are normal doesn't mean that they can't change too. And we also can work faster and more productive, I think, than we ever have before. So freeing up time in this level of intensity that we get work done is incredibly important. And I think also one of the things that we talked about, Mickey, that is really important as well is we started talking about how to manage communication with our
Yeah.
team members when it comes to working remotely because emotions can also burn us out and not knowing how to properly communicate when we're all just digital. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we all know the more frustrated you are, the more tense you are, the easier it is to get your feelings hurt or for a group of people to get their feelings hurt. So if you're in a situation like if you're on a finance team and you're in the middle of an audit, you're probably going to be walking on eggshells because you're all feeling the pressure of that. And so a lot of us, I think, have gone into in-person meetings where we set guidelines for the meeting ahead of time about how we're going to treat each other. We're going to treat each other respectfully. We're going to ask open-ended questions, those types of things. We can shift that and do that same thing for online work. So whether we're talking about for a specific project like an audit or something like that, or just the way we're going to treat each other as team members, the more we can proactively communicate and say, okay, this is how we're going to handle it if we find ourselves in a difficult situation, the easier it is. So again, back to the very first thing I said is know what motivates you, know what demotivates you. I'm somebody that's always on time. And I try to be flexible and try to be patient and agile. But if I'm in an intense situation, if I have a deadline tomorrow, I might not be as patient with other people who are late as I normally would be. So if I can have that conversation with you ahead of time and say, hey, timeliness is super important. Can you just send me a message if you're going to be late to a meeting, or send me a message if something was due today and you're not going to be able to get it to me to tomorrow morning? You know now that that's a trigger for me. And we've created that easy open communication. So it's super easy for you to send me a chat instead of spending time worrying about the fact that you're going to miss a deadline. And so proactive communication, I think, is the number one way to avoid hurt feelings, miscommunications, assumptions. Just have a conversation beforehand and talk about what drives you, what motivates you, and how you're going to treat each other. Um, it clears that awkwardness that comes along with like in that weird, like maybe passive aggression that we see sometimes with people. And then the other piece is that I think don't forget to have fun communication as well. So if you're working 100% remote or even like me, like 95, 98% remote, a lot of our messages can just be about work. And so we're missing that connection that we used to have when we were seeing each other face to face. So creating communication methods like fun chats where you only share pictures of your dogs, or like today, a lot of my team is doing Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you to everybody that celebrates Star Wars Day. Just things that are fun that connect us in a different way, and so that we're still finding that enjoyment at work.
I love that you opened up talking about how this month ties into last month about self-esteem and self-image, because what I hear, especially in you saying, know yourself, know what motivates you, know what demotivates you, know the type of person that you are, it makes me think like you have to know who you are so that you can express these things. If you
Yeah.
don't have these answers to what motivates you or what demotivates you, if you don't know off the top of your head what frustrates you, and what you just can allow and deal with and doesn't really matter to you, then it's going to be harder for others to communicate with you and support you because if you don't know, they most certainly do not know. So these are
Right.
places where we can start to ask ourselves some of the deeper questions of reflection for ourselves as well. So Mickey, I want you to take us through a little bit of an exercise to really help us to start to manage this burnout and find ourselves being more productive and enjoying work a little bit more. So I think we were going to do a little bit of calendar blocking, I believe.
Yeah, so I'd love for everybody, if you're able to open your calendar, I'm going to open mine too. So if you see me looking off, it's just because I'm looking at my own calendar. I want you to look at this week. And if you haven't done this already, I want you to look at two different days that you can block off at least 30 minutes to go for a walk, to go to the gym, to play with your dog, whatever it is that like really um, gets your posture right, gets you breathing right. And I want you to be comfortable enough to schedule that during your normal working hours. I think that's where sometimes people can feel a little hesitant, like they'll schedule it before 8 a.m. or after 5 p.m. But this little 30-minute break, I'm telling you, it's going to do wonders. So pick 2 days, give yourself a 30-minute, you can call it focus time. You don't have to be explicit about what it is, but you know what it is. And then when you've done that, put a 555 in the chat for us. And if any of you struggle doing this, because like I said before, I do recognize that I have the privilege of, I know I loved this, this is scary. I do recognize that I have the privilege of owning my own calendar, and not everybody has that. And so if you're struggling with this, please reach out. Is this okay to say, Kara, please schedule a session with me and we can look at your calendar together and I'll help you find some time. For 30 minutes, if you're like, I can't do this, 30 minutes is too long, cool, do 15 minutes and 15 minutes. 15 minutes is nothing. I think about how much time, I'm just going to speak for myself, not for all of you, how much time I waste playing games on my phone or scrolling through Facebook. If I were just at the end of my day, to schedule 15 minutes to go for a walk instead of doing that, I still have my Facebook time and my game time at the end of the day. So think of that. Okay, great. So now that's the most important piece, which is taking care of yourself. We did that first. So I don't know if you noticed that, but we did the healthy setting boundaries for ourselves, getting outside and taking a walk before we looked at our work. The second thing that I want you to do is look at all of your meetings that are scheduled. And if you have control over these scheduled meetings, do you actually need all of the meetings? Could they be an email? Could they be, if you use Google or a shared services like that with your work, could it be something that you're doing asynchronously in a document? To Kira's point, does it need to be an hour meeting? Could it be 30 minutes? One of the things that I hear from a lot of people is that we go into meetings that don't have agendas. And so we spend 15 or 20 minutes figuring out even what we're talking about. So are there meetings on your calendar where if you just spent 5 minutes creating an agenda, you could shorten that meeting? So just do that and give me not a 666. Let's do a 777. If you've found, give me a 777 if you found one meeting that you could modify a little bit. 777. Uh, Made myself laugh with that one. And so that is just a simple exercise that if you do that I love that. This meeting is a self-care check-in is optional. I love that. Yes, that's another one, Lauren. Are there meetings? Can you give this gift to other people and make people optional that don't necessarily have to be there? For those of you that are AI comfortable or AI curious, can you record the meeting if you don't have to be there? Different things like that. Yeah, and I do recognize that sometimes meetings aren't scheduled by you, and so this week maybe it's hard, but look ahead. Look ahead a week or 2 or 3 weeks even to make sure you schedule yourself that time. And then for the meetings you do schedule, have an agenda, schedule them for 30 or 50 minutes. Just take a little bit of that control. It really does add up over the week and over the month and year.
Hmm. So much fun. We're getting into
Calendar
control.
fun with Mickey.
Exactly. It's so true. I mean, this matters. And maybe even, Jamie said, sadly, most of my meetings were not scheduled by me. Maybe you start going into meetings being like, hey, how do we feel about being more effective by having an agenda? If you can have those conversations too. So it doesn't have to be this, if you can't have like the immediate satisfaction of making the change now, maybe it's more long-term cultural, structural change that you
Exactly.
start to inspire.
Yeah.
So, thank you all so much for being here for Motivational Monday. We wanted to give you practical tools for how to manage burnout. I know we didn't talk about burnout specifics specifically. We'll be diving mostly into that, into the deep dive. What does burnout feel like? What does that actually look like? Things along those lines. But these Motivational Mondays are quick hitters, and we really wanted to give you those easy tools to start to manage your life, your day, your work and feel more happy, healthy, productive, and whole doing all of it. Thank you, Mickey, so much for being here. I'm going to
Thank you,
drop this
everyone.
profile in the chat again once more so you can schedule a call if you're like, oh, I might need a little bit of help with that. There's a survey that pops up at the end if you would like to fill out the survey, leave any love letters. I'll get them to Mickey if they relate to her. Thank you
I
all so
love love letters.
Right? We love the love. Thank you all
Yeah.
so much for trusting Life Guides on your journey. And we will see you next Monday for Motivational Monday, continuing our remote and flex work and productivity. Thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful week. Bye.
Thank you. May the fourth be with you.